Hey there, and thanks for watching. I have always been fascinated with the study of secret millionaires. Secret millionaires, or millionaires next door, undercover or stealth millionaires, are people who have a ton of money, have a very high net worth, yet don't look like it. One of my favorite books on the subject of secret millionaires is The Millionaire Next Door by Dr. Thomas Stanley. He did a 10-year clinical research study on first-generation millionaires. That's millionaires that have built up their own wealth. They didn't come from money, they didn't inherit money, they weren't born into it, they made it themselves. And one of the things that was so striking about his findings is that people that have a high net worth generally, on the whole, don't look like it. They accumulate that net worth by living very frugally. By and large, that is the main indicator of wealth. This is one of my favorite books. I read it close to 15 years ago, and it's really informed my thinking on the topic of money and wealth and accumulating wealth and financial independence in general. They don't wear flashy clothes, they don't have the designer jewelry or watches or accessories, they don't drive fancy cars. In this video, I'm going to be exploring the stories of 5 of these secret millionaires. So if that sounds interesting to you, then just stick around. If you are new to this channel, welcome to the Well-Behaved Wallet, where we talk about achieving financial independence, especially on a low income. We share strategies, tips, mindset hacks, wins, losses, and overall encouragement to keep one another moving on the path toward financial independence. So if you haven't already subscribed, would love to have you along for the ride, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so that you don't miss a video. Now on with the show. So the first secret millionaire is Sylvia Bloom, who is a legal secretary from Brooklyn. She worked for the same law firm as a secretary for 67 years. And when she died at the age of 96, she had amassed a fortune of $8 million, which she left for college scholarships to the Henry Street settlement in the Lower East Side. Sylvia Bloom's gift of $8 million for college scholarships was the largest single gift from an individual to the social service group in its 125-year history. Even Sylvia's closest friends may have had no idea that she had amassed such a fortune. She lived very frugally, dressed very simply, and even took public transportation to work almost every day, even though she had a fortune of over $8 million. She never talked about her money either, and it was largely a secret that she had cultivated over $8 million, and that was spread among 3 brokerage houses and at 11 banks. Sylvia Bloom was married to Raymond Margoyles, who passed away in 2002, and she chose to keep her own name after she married, and this was very much indicative of her independent nature. The majority of her assets were also in her name, so it's entirely possible that even her husband had no idea that she had amassed such a fortune. So how did she do it? This is the question. On a secretary's salary, how did she manage to grow a fortune of over $8 million. Sylvia was a secretary in the era when they ran their bosses' lives, including their stock purchases and their personal investments. So what Sylvia would do was every time her boss made a stock purchase, Sylvia would make a corresponding stock purchase of that same stock, obviously at a lower level because she was just on a secretary's salary. She picked up the tips that her boss was getting and she made those same moves. And over the years, she clearly got really good at it because she managed to grow a fortune on only a secretary's salary. She also mentioned that the one regret she had in her life was that she didn't become a lawyer herself. So I'd say of all the regrets you could have in life, it's not a bad one. Our second secret millionaire is Robert Morin. He lived alone, drove a 1992 Plymouth, and worked at the University of New Hampshire Library for nearly 50 years. Until he died at the age of 77 in 2015, no one had any idea that Robert Morin was a multi-millionaire. Robert Morin graduated from the University of New Hampshire in 1961, and he worked at the school's library for the rest of his life. When he died in March of 2015, he had set up to bequeath his $4 million fortune to the University of New Hampshire. By all accounts, he lived very simply, driving that 1992 Plymouth. He would have Fritos and Coke for breakfast, a quick cheese sandwich at his desk at the library for lunch, and then for dinner, he would reheat some sort of a frozen meal because all he had to work with in his small home was a microwave. So he managed to amass this fortune through frugal living and smart investing. So how did he do it? In 1971, Robert Morin had a life insurance policy for the benefit of his mother. He worked with financial advisor Ed Morin, who remained his his financial advisor until his death. And in 1971, Robert Morin was earning $9,000 a year. Ed, the financial advisor, learned that he also had substantial amounts in regular CDs and over $100,000 in his checking account. So financial advisor Ed made some introductions, and financial advisor Ed advised Bob to put his money into more diversified investments and other insurance and annuity products to improve his rate of return. When Bob's mother died in 2004, he told financial advisor Ed that he would like to make the university his sole beneficiary. Over his career, Bob Morin invested the majority of his salary and purchased a generous life insurance policy for the benefit of the university. How did he become a secret millionaire? Through smart, thrifty living and careful investing. It's not really a secret, it's how he did it. Our next secret millionaire is Ronald Read, who is a former gas station attendant and janitor who died in June of 2014. Unbeknownst to everyone around him, he had quietly amassed an $8 million fortune thanks to smart spending and investing habits. Even Read's close family was tremendously surprised when they found out about his hidden wealth. Read came from humble beginnings. He was the first in his family to graduate from high school and served in North Africa, Italy, and the Pacific Theater during World War II. When he came back to the States after World War II, he became a janitor and gas station attendant, which is where he met his wife Barbara when he was working at the service station. At the time, Barbara had 2 teenage sons. Ronald and Barbara got married in 1960, and Read financed his stepson's education. Barbara died of cancer in 1970, and Read did not remarry. Read's hobbies included wood chopping, coin collecting, and stamp collecting. He had breakfast at the same coffee joint every morning and would order an English muffin with peanut butter. And in 2007, a friend showed him how to secure his first library card. After that, he would regularly visit the library and check out piles of books. So how did he do it? How did he acquire his fortune? Ronald Read was called a blue-collar guy with blue-chip smarts. His portfolio included shares of companies like Pacific Gas and Electric, the J.M. Smucker Company, CVS Health, and Johnson & Johnson. So he was a buy and hold kind of guy. He focused on companies that paid generous dividends and would reinvest the dividends by purchasing additional stock. He did own shares of Lehman Brothers, but when it went bankrupt in 2008, it didn't really affect his overall portfolio that much because he was very well diversified. He also read the Wall Street Journal daily. So his neighbors, friends, and family did not know the scale of the money he had because he just didn't look like someone who had a lot of money. He used a safety pin on a fraying denim jacket so he could continue wearing it, and he would put on shabby flannel shirts and wear them every day. He was a patron at a Friendly's restaurant where one time somebody paid for his meal because they didn't think that he could afford to pay. He's a definition of a secret millionaire, or the millionaire next door. Our fourth secret millionaire is Doris Schwartz. Doris was a former flight attendant and one-time teacher. During the Vietnam War, she volunteered to work on flights transporting troops to and from Southeast Asia. And this is according to her longtime friend, Ken Smith. Doris would also speak of meeting movie stars and other celebrities on the flights, and Joe DiMaggio was one of her favorites. Doris met a pilot named Carl Schaefer, and the two became companions. She referred to him as her significant other. They shared a New York apartment, and for a time after they retired, they lived on a sailboat in Fort Lauderdale. They were together for decades, but never married or had children. When she died in 2013, Doris had a fortune that amassed close to $4 million, spread across several countries, continents, and asset classes. The two co-executors of Doris's estate were her longtime friend Ken Smith and Nancy Frey, who first met Doris Schwartz when her son was renting an apartment in a building owned by Doris's sister. Nancy and Doris became friends, and Nancy kind of looked after Doris in Doris's later years. To say that Doris lived frugally is kind of an understatement. Her 100-year-old home had never been renovated, and she drove a 1995 Toyota. Nancy would go grocery shopping for Doris, and Doris would instruct Nancy only to buy things that were on sale. She only ate very few things, and Nancy would tell stories that Doris's favorite were peanut butter and ice cream, but only the brands that were on sale. And Doris would eat peanut butter out of the jar with a spoon, and she would go through jars, and eventually they would just all be lined up in her room with the spoons still in them. She would eat one container of ice cream only until it was finished. From her travels, Doris had acquired a number of ornaments, specifically from Japan, and one of her favorite things every year was to put up her Christmas tree featuring those ornaments, even though she really didn't celebrate the holidays that much. After her death, Nancy and Ken began the complicated process of unraveling her financial history as they executed her estate. Her estate included gold that was stored at a Swiss bank that Ken flew to Switzerland to recover. The bulk of her estate went to the York County Community Foundation to fund education, and this endowment of $4 million was large enough to make headlines. In her later years, Schwartz rarely spent money and almost lived like a bag lady. She didn't even buy notepads. She preferred to use the backs of envelopes to jot down her notes. Doris would only watch sports programs or financial news shows, and she would jot down her cryptic financial notes on the backs of those envelopes. So once more, classic definition of a secret millionaire or a millionaire next door. And our final millionaire next door, secret millionaire, Grace Grooner. Grace died in 2010 at the age of 100. She was orphaned at a young age and raised by kind neighbors who paid for her to attend college at Lake Forest College in Lake Forest, Illinois. She shopped at rummage sales, loved to walk everywhere, so didn't really need a car, and worked most of her life as a secretary. She never married and had no children, yet her friends would call her one of the happiest people ever. So it came as a bit of a surprise to Lake Forest College when they learned upon Grace's death that she had left a gift of $7.2 million for the institution to start a scholarship program for students who had big dreams but little money. So how did Grace do it? How did Grace amass her wealth? So here it is. In 1935, when Grace was about 25 and during the heights of the Great Depression, Grace secured a job as a secretary at Abbott Pharmaceuticals, and she worked there for the next 43 years. In her first year at Abbott in 1935, she bought 3 shares of Abbott stock for a total investment of $180. She held on to the stock for the next 75 years, reinvested all dividend payments. Her Abbott stock split several times over in the next 75 years, but together with the dividend reinvestment in her shares, she died with over 100,000 shares of Abbott stock. This was worth nearly $7.2 million. This is kind of a cool story too, because Grace actually did manage to enjoy her later years. She traveled extensively in between the time she left Abbott when she retired and the time she died at the age of 100. So she did manage to enjoy a little bit of her wealth. She seemed by all accounts to be a joyful and happy person, and it really seems like money was just a byproduct of her overall state of thrift and enjoying life. I think the coolest part of Grace's story is that the simple cottage that she lived in by Lake Forest College was also donated to the institution and will be renovated by the endowment and is now called just Grace's Cottage. So there you have it, 5 stories of real-life millionaires next door, secret millionaires who you wouldn't know to look at them that they have such high net worth. I hope this has been interesting to you and given you some food for thought, maybe some encouragement for your own journey to financial independence. I thank you so much for watching, and I hope, as always, that you will keep watching. Thanks. Bye.